Welcome to the first ever Hockey Guy video done in the US of A that didn't involve me getting married. I'm pretty sure that's the case. I think that's it. Now there's a ding I just heard, which means that I got a message. Should I stop the video? No, because this is high tech, baby. This is high tech. Really? Maybe it is her phone. Because that wasn't a message from me. Alright. I don't have a board. I have some jerseys. And this series that some people would have thought, well, he's not doing a Stanley Cup winner video today. You're wrong. By paying Motel 6 extra money, I can give you guys a show today. That's right. That's right. Yvonne went downstairs, used our bank card, and paid extra money so I can talk to you fine people tonight and do my standard videos. And tomorrow night there will be videos as well. Tomorrow is Mount St. Helens. I am so excited. I am so excited. Like 37 years ago, I sat in my living room and I watched that mountain blow up, and the idea of actually seeing it live is honestly more exciting than anything that could happen in the world of hockey other than Vancouver winning Stanley Cup. So there's a greater chance of St. Helens blowing up again than that happening. Now, because I don't have a board, I'm doing things a little different. The 1980 Edmonton Oilers, they took 22 games to win the Stanley Cup. Okay, so I've loaded up their playoff statistics. The Jets. The Jets that year took a 3-1 series lead on Edmonton. I really thought that was going to be the year. They beat them 4-3 in double overtime in Game 4 to go up 3-1, going back to Edmonton. And they lost the next 3 games. So Winnipeg lost in 7. Then the Kings, here comes Gretzky, they beat them again in 4. 4 games. When LA and Edmonton met after Gretzky's trade, they usually were fun series to watch, but they usually didn't last very long. Edmonton beat the Kings 7-0, 6-1, 5-4, and then 6-5 in overtime to sweep the series. Chicago was a bit more of a challenge. They won the first, they lost the next 2. I remember being excited at that time because I was like, come on, the Hawks are going to knock them off, and then they didn't. It would be a couple years later before the Oilers would lose to the Hawks in the playoffs. So the Oilers get by in 6, and then 1990, it's Boston. Boston had home ice, and they won all 3 games in Boston, and they won the Stanley Cup in the Boston Garden. They beat Boston 3-2, 7-2. They lost 2-1 in Game 3, and then they won 5-1, 4-1. It was the worst heartbreak, I think, that Ray Bourque suffered as a professional hockey player. I don't know that from interviews or anything, but I would imagine if you held his feet to the fire, he would say this was the most disappointing showing that he had in the playoffs. It was asked in the comment section, would you feel better about your team having lost in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup or not making the Stanley Cup final? The pain is so much worse when you lose in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup. It's so much worse when you lose in the Stanley Cup final, period. It is very hard to come back from that. So here was Edmonton's team, and again, because I don't have the board, I did things a little differently. Yvonne went to Target and got me cards. I know you guys are excited, but she's mine. Kevin Lowell had 2 points in the playoffs, had 33 points in the regular season, and 140 penalty minutes. He was pretty rough out there. Mark Messier, 31 points in the playoffs in 22 games, and 129 points in the regular season. When Gretzky was gone, Messier was able to play everything, and he did. And he did it well. This was the one cup Edmonton won without Gretzky. Jari Kurri, 93 points in the regular season, 25 in the playoffs. Jari proved after Wayne left that he didn't need Wayne to score. Wayne and Jari definitely fed each other a lot, but one didn't need the other to still be fantastic. It was just great when they were together. Steve Smith in the playoffs, 15 points, which is a lot for him in 22 games. 41 in the regular season and 171 penalty minutes. Again, Steve Smith was a lot tougher than people may remember. Jeff Bukaboom only played 2 games in the playoffs, but because he played more than half the regular season, he gets his name on the Stanley Cup. 13 points in the regular season, 86 penalty minutes in those 46 games. And here's a surprise. Mark Lamb, 17 points in 22 games. 28 during the regular season in 58 games. This is why when a guy's a really good playoff and you go, this guy's going to be great, always take it with a grain of salt. Because you can never tell what's going to happen after. Wait till we get to me talking about guys like Fernando Persani and stuff. The video series I'm going to do about teams that got to the final and then lost in the final. And I'm going to do that because that's just, it encompasses more teams and allows for more discussion because a lot of the time it's the failure's more interesting than the victory. You really think about it. Joe Murphy, 14 points in the playoffs on the kid line, 25 points in the regular season. That kid line came into its own, which was Joe Murphy, Adam Graves, and Marty Jelena. They were a key to the Oilers winning this Stanley Cup. Absolutely. And it gave the impression that maybe the Oilers dynasty wasn't going to stop. That maybe guys like Murphy, Graves, and Jelena were going to emerge as really solid players. Joe Murphy, remember, was a number 1 draft pick. And it was seen that maybe that playoff was going to turn his fortunes around and maybe he was going to start living up to his potential. It didn't really happen that way, but he had a much better time in Edmonton than he did in Detroit. Glenn Anderson, 22 points in the playoffs, 72 points in the regular season, and 107 penalty minutes. As Anderson got older, he got more ornery. And while his offensive talent diminished a little bit, he was a pain in the ass to play against. Here's Adam Graves from that kid line. 11 points in the playoffs, 21 points in the regular season, 123 penalty minutes. Graves, of course, would end up going to New York, and New York would kind of do something in 1994. I can't really remember right now. My brain's still foggy from the Flames in 1989. Craig Mctavish had 8 points in the playoffs, 43 points in the regular season. Solid player, McTavish. Unspectacular, but a really solid defensive center. Kelly Buchberger had 5 points in the playoffs, 8 in the regular season, and 168 penalty minutes. Again, this Oilers team was a lot tougher than people remember. Craig Simpson, 31 points in the playoffs in 22 games, 61 in the regular season, and 180 in the playoffs. Simpson was another guy that ramped up his game in the playoffs. You may not get that during the regular season, but he would up his game in the playoffs. He upped his game, now up yours. Marty Jelena from that kid line had 5 points in the playoffs, 25 in the regular season, but he only played 46 games. And of those 25 points, 17 were goals. There was a lot of reason to believe that Marty Jelena was going to be something special at that point. And in my mind, he was. While he never quite reached the goals that I think people expected coming out of that 1990 Stanley Cup, he was a damn good player. The doctor, Randy Gregg, he had pretty much a career year for himself offensively. 8 points in the playoffs. I swear to God, that's an 8. 24 points in the regular season in 48 games and a plus 24. And I know there's a lot of people who don't like plus minus, don't talk about plus minus. Plus 24 in 48 games is pretty impressive, considering that this Oilers team was not great during the regular season. This was the one year that they really surprised people by winning the Stanley Cup again. And there seemed to be a feeling of, we will prove we can win it without Wayne. Charlie Huddy had 6 points in the playoffs, 24 in the regular season. Is that right? Did he really have 24? I seem to remember him having more. Did I write down the right amount? Watch me find out I'm right. And I'm right. He had 1 goal, 23 assists, 24 points. Jeff Smith. He only played 3 games in the playoffs, but he played during the regular season. He had 15 points in the regular season. Craig Muni. 3 points in the playoffs, 17 points in the regular season. And again, you'll notice this is no longer a lot of Stanley Cup winning guys that you say, oh, should be in the Hall of Fame. A lot less of that with the 1990 team than any other Oilers team. But still, hard workers. Oh, I didn't get his numbers. Rustalainen only played 10 games during the regular season. He had 8 points. In the playoffs, he played all 22 games and he had 13 points. Good thing I got that page loaded, huh? Bill Ranford, the Conn Smythe winner that year. 24, 16, and 9. 16 wins in the playoffs. Won every game in the playoffs. Pokey Reddick was the backup. And we'll get to him in a second. We'll talk about that in a minute. Dave Brown only played 3 games in the playoffs, but he played more than half of their games during the regular season, had 6 points, 145 penalty minutes, one of the toughest fighters in the history of the game, Dave Brown. I really, honestly, I don't know how many fights he lost, but it wasn't many. Pokey Reddick played 11 games, had a record of 5-4-2. And to think he has a cup ring, that's weird. Peter Clima, as a Boston fan, there's a reason for me kind of wincing when I say his name. 5 goals in the playoffs, that's all he had in 20-some games. He had 53 points in the regular season. He was benched. Coach was like, you suck. I believe it was John Muckler was the coach. You suck. Sit on the bench in Boston. And then they were in overtime, and they were in double overtime, and we got to finish this game. Who hasn't played for a while? Clima, you suck. Get out there. So Clima gets out there after sitting for about a week on the bench and skates around all the Bruins and scores. And to this day, it still bothers me. I'm trying to hide it as well as I can, but it just sucks when you got a ringer on the bench. I mean, I know Clima sucked, but he'd been resting for hours. And when he skates around all these Bruins who've been just busting their asses, he didn't do anything. That's why he got stapled to the bench. Okay. All right. That's why anytime, if you're watching a playoff game and they start talking about the players who haven't played in overtime yet, I call that the Peter Clima rule. Those guys shouldn't be allowed to get back on the ice. If you didn't play in the first overtime, you're in the box for the rest of the game because you're not going on the ice in the second overtime and taking advantage of tired players. And I don't care if you're against Montreal. I don't care if it's Boston doing it. You don't take advantage of tired. It just sucks. Esa Tikkanen, 24 points in the playoffs, 63 points in regular season, and 161 penalty minutes. Most of those for speaking teakish and just aggravating people and trying to stick Brian Hayward's stick up inside his jersey and stuff. It's still the greatest thing ever. Just, Brian Hayward and him behind the net, and he just grabs Hayward's stick and just, I'm going to put this in my jersey here. And Hayward's just wailing on him with his blocker. Gets sent to the box laughing. That's how you play rat in hockey. That's how you do it and make me laugh. Grant Fuhr, 9-7-3 regular season. This, of course, was when substance issues came to light with Grant Fuhr, and the NHL handled it wrong. Suspending a guy who has substance abuse issues is absolutely the worst thing you can do. And I mean that. And I'm not talking about while they have them. You can hold them out, and then when they get clean, you bring them back. The NHL had such arcane, stupid regulations with that I don't know that the sport has ever really got to where baseball, football, and other major sports are. The NHL just turns its back to it. So I always felt bad for Grant Fuhr, and anytime he was interviewed during that run, so here's Bill Ranford taking his job. And anytime he was interviewed, he said nothing but nice things about Ranford. He never complained once about not being in the game, and he never showed any sign that he was bitter. And while I had never liked Grant Fuhr during the 80s, the way he handled Bill Ranford taking over that net and making it clear he was the goalie now and Fuhr was on his way out, the way Fuhr handled that gave me nothing but respect for him. And, at the time I kind of joked around, like, he doesn't seem like he cares that he's losing his job. Shouldn't he be angry? I look back now and it's like, you know what? That's awesome. It's awesome that he can watch a teammate take his job, pat him on the back and say, good job, man, you're playing great. And Ranford was great through that playoff. He was never a fantastic regular season goaltender, but Bill Ranford always was capable of turning it up a notch in the playoffs. So there's the 1990 Edmonton Oilers, reporting from a Motel 6 in Kelso, Washington. This is the Hockey Guy. Thanks for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and I'll talk to you again soon.